Hello, folks. Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk more about Tesla. Tesla has built a set of economic moats, also known as barriers to entry, that make it impossible for other companies to compete. Today, we're going to analyze Tesla's 9 key moats and to understand why this explains why investors will get rich holding Tesla stock in the year 2026 and beyond. Here are the details. All right. So this is Warren Buffett's terminology of moats. All right. Think of a castle. Think of rings of water filled with crocodiles and alligators, and maybe more rings with piranhas and stuff that needs to be crossed in order to get at the treasure that's in the castle. And the treasure in this case is the economic profit of the firm. In economics, we call this these are barriers to entry, things that keep companies from stealing your lunch money, so to speak. Revenue is great. All right, revenue is great, but without moats, competitors can enter the market and take away your long run economic profit. So, what are Tesla's moats and how strong are they? First of all, number one has to be the leadership of the company. All right, Elon Musk, founder, CEO, chief technologist for the company. I would say that his educational background and combined with his personality is a real strong barrier to entry because he has dual degrees in physics and economics. It's very, very rare. Um, and he didn't go to just any school. I mean, University of Pennsylvania is in the Ivy League. It's a pretty good school. So, in terms of business experience, we're talking about starting a software internet type business. Zip2 sold to Compaq Computer, 1999 for $300 million. He pocketed a good chunk of that himself. I believe he started that with his brother Kimball Musk. Took that profits from that, a lot of the profits from that, and put it into a company that became PayPal. All right. PayPal then was sold to eBay 1.5 billion in 2002. Takes the profit from that and founds SpaceX. All right, a rocket company. Everybody thought he was crazy. It's like, I'm gonna turn myself into a rocket scientist, and he did it, and it's been a very successful company. Current market capitalization value is about pretty close to $1 trillion, and they are planning their initial public offering in 2026 this year. Today's January 1st of 2026, by the way. And 2004, all right, becomes an investor, in Tesla, eventually takes the company over, and Tesla currently has a market capitalization of $1.5 trillion dollars. So we have a person with educational training, experience, background, and a psychological tendency that kind of to me indicates that he's kind of like almost addicted to creating economic value, all right, in these businesses. I don't think he can stop. Number two, they are a talent magnet. Okay, they are drawing in some of the creme de la creme, the top of the top of engineering and business talent into the company. That's a very mission driven type of company, sustainable abundance. They're actually kind of moving in the direction of amazing abundance. All right, is the what Elon Musk recently has talked about, changing the mission statement to world's most difficult engineering challenges. Now you might think, well, why would people be attracted to working on the most difficult engineering challenges? Well, if you were one of the top engineering talents at your engineering school, You could go to a company that is very marketing focused, a traditional legacy auto company, and you could maybe design cup holders for the vehicles that maybe add a feature that is important to the marketing department, or you could work on what I consider to be one of the world's most difficult engineering challenges. For example, their full self-driving capability. So smart people tend to enjoy challenges, intellectual challenges to be stimulated. So that draws people in. It's also a great way for people to signal to others their skill set. Because if you work for Tesla, you can kind of like brag that I work for Tesla, and it signals to others, and you can go on, maybe work at another company, and it's a good resume builder. Flat management structure. Elon Musk tends to get into the weeds of the nuts and bolts, the core technology, and it's not uncommon for him to, walk around amongst the engineers in the company that are working on problems and inquire as to what's going on and actually help solve problems in things that are coming up. So access to the CEO is very common in this organization. Stock-based compensation without United Auto Workers type of situation for their employees. And I recently was chatting with a great guy, all right, who it works at the Ford Wayne Assembly plant. He's a UAW member, and he's about my age. And he was complaining that the younger UAW members that work there, they tend not to show up to work consistently. And this might seem crazy. It's like, well, why would younger workers not be showing up on a consistent basis at this assembly plant? And why do they have to have two people in order to do one job at the Wayne Assembly Plant? And the bottom line is that we have federal legislation called FERPA that makes it very easy for people to qualify for like a medical exemption. They could go to the doctor and say, well, I've been stressed out and I need to take time off from work. And it just gives a blanket excuse, and they have to be paid, and their jobs have to be kept in place. So the incentives for working in the UAW type of culture is completely different than the incentive system for Tesla. They tend to get about 200 applicants per job there, so it's very selective. Another one, technology, car as computer with wheels. So the very DNA of the company, the very starting point is it's a completely different way of thinking about transportation, vertically integrated computer stack, over the air software updates. They can fix things, they can update things with almost no variable cost. The autonomous capability is huge, right? That's cars driving themselves is going to be driving huge capability, and they've got such a lead over other companies. I just got done watching a video on YouTube by Kim Java, and she covers the electric vehicle industry, and she was test riding in a Rivian that has their latest version of autonomous vehicle software in it, and explaining how it works. And it just blows my mind at how short-sighted Rivian is on how they're going about doing it by thinking that they still need to incorporate LiDAR and all these other radar type sensors, and they think that they can fuse all that input data with their camera system, and adding all that cost and complexity. And in this video, it was very clear that the Rivian version of autonomous driving software was just terrible compared to Tesla, and just so poorly designed. I feel sorry for the Rivian people. The thing that really first caught my attention years ago about Tesla was when I learned about their lossy motor system that they use in order to keep the batteries warm in cold climates. There was a college automotive technology professor that had a series of YouTube videos about Teslas, and he got into the very technical details on how they're actually using the electric motors as heaters to help warm up the battery automatically in the winter time, okay? Because we're talking lithium ion batteries, electrochemical processes is temperature sensitive, and there used to be years and years ago problems with cold electric cars not having range, and Tesla decided to think of the electric motor as its and broke it down into the core fundamental physics of how this thing works with coils of wire, with magnets, and sending alternating, fluctuating signal into the motor in order to create vibration of the electrical field of the electrons inside, and that vibration turns into thermal energy, and it just blew my mind that somebody thought of using the electric motor in a completely different way than what you typically would find, because it's like in a typical engineer's mind, in order to heat things up, they would add a separate electric heater, okay, that would add extra weight to the vehicle, and it would, add extra cost, and it wouldn't be nearly as energy efficient as using, the vibration. It's like using the electric motor in this way to me indicates that they are taking every single element of the vehicle and breaking it down into the fundamental laws of physics, and then developing their own customized technology off of all these elements. CPU, GPU replaces all these random chips that are in traditional automobiles and improves supply chain efficiency. That's advantage. Blending, they're regenerative braking with friction because they have, it's all software controlled, the, how to, in a sense, harvest the mechanical energy of the car moving, and harvesting that energy back and converting it back into electrical energy so they can reuse that energy, and how they blend that all together is very efficient. And so when you add these computer science types of elements all together, that creates a huge barrier to entry that other companies just can't match. Manufacturing scale and vertical integration. So factory, complete control, all right, vertically integrated. That we're talking about giga casting, okay, gigantic casting methods that a single cast part has more structural rigidity. It simplifies the manufacturing process, and lowers costs. Okay, they really don't have a huge number of models. Okay, and because they don't have a huge number of models, and number of car models that they do have can share a lot of common parts and and components, such as especially with the Model 3 and the Model Y, they are able to exist down here in the lower portion of the long run average total cost curve of manufacturing. Okay, so you could think of Rivian, for example, being kind of caught up here in the upper end of the long run average cost curve, and that is really a recipe for a long run disaster, because they have to charge more, and because they have to charge more, they're going to get less volume than Tesla, and Tesla's already down at this point. The other traditional legacy auto companies are also caught up in this area with their electric vehicles, because the technology needed to make electric cars so different than internal combustion, and there's so few shared core components that, it's just too expensive. Ford just discontinued the 50 Lightning one, the 150 Ford F-150 Lightning, because they weren't producing enough volume in order to get down to this lower portion of the cost curve, and it was just too expensive. Control, reduce costs, and maximize innovation, so they can, take those cost savings and put more of their money into research and development. They have software defined manufacturing. So the entire manufacturing system you can think of as having the ability of control things with using software. That's a huge advantage. Their scale reduces costs, increases the quantity of units that they can sell. That leads to increased scale. It's a positive feedback loop. Full self-driving, I talked a little bit about this already. Basically, the millions of people, and I think there's like 5 or 6 million people that drive Teslas these days, with the cameras are already, they're constantly feeding in data on the best driving habits automatically get fed into the AI. So everybody that's driving a Tesla is also doing a dual purpose as being an AI trainer, and that's super, super low cost. So other companies like Waymo, for example, how are they going to train their AI? Okay, they would have to reproduce millions of Waymos at $100,000 a piece and somehow have humans drive them around in order to train their system. I don't know of any company that can is even close to having that type of a data. Nobody is close to having the amount of training data that Tesla has. And because it's vertically integrated, they have this fast, iterative data feedback loop for their full self-driving. The vision-only camera system doesn't have all these expensive extra sensors like LiDAR that will just confuse AI. I mean, this is one of the genius things that goes back to the leadership of the company is that Elon Musk realizes that human biology is behind how cars drive themselves today. And we have two eyes, and this two eyes gives us this, you know, ability of being able to perceive relative distances for objects in front of us. And they have 8 cameras built in, so they have even more eyes than we humans have. And vision only system is been working fairly well for humans for years and years. So all you need is cameras and AI, and you can do it at much lower costs. So that huge amount of data that they have allows them to identify the very extreme edge cases, situations where you might be driving through, a construction zone and there's a traffic accident, and then there's, police or something moving in and out of a situation, and you have very complex, unusual driving conditions. The massive data allows them to identify these edge cases and then use that in order to further improve their software. So more cars, more data. More data means that they sell more cars. And it's all country agnostic. So whether it's China, whether it's Europe, whether it's Canada, Mexico, United States, their AI can just observe all of the symbols, meaning like road signs, traffic signals, the line markers on the road, etc., in each country, and just absorb that information and be trained for each country kind of automatically. By the way, a couple days ago, the first reported transcontinental trip solely using Tesla full self-driving was completed, where a gentleman drove from, I believe it was Los Angeles, all the way to South Carolina, and never had to intervene with the car. So the car did everything on this entire trip, including parking itself, including finding the supercharger stations and stuff like that. And so that's kind of a major, major milestone that other companies aren't even close to being able to, approach. So, supercharger network, as I mentioned, billions of capital has already been deployed and invested. Everybody is standardized on this in terms of the other auto companies. They can optimize it for the charging system on Tesla vehicles. Their engineers design the chargers, so then their engineers design the cars. So it's like it's going to be very well harmonized. All the competitors have to pay a little subsidy to them, basically, when their electric cars are charging using this. And there would be huge switching costs at this point for the legacy auto companies if they wanted to somehow switch over to using a different charging standard because they're already standardized on the plugs and everything for Teslas. Complete software integration with the car and the charging network. Investor base. How is this a barrier to entry? Well, here's how it works. Tesla investors are very risk tolerant. They're used to stock price fluctuation. They are in line with the idea of spending a lot of money on research and development, and they're very future focused, long-term thinking. And they don't demand capital draining dividend checks be paid to them all the time, like you have with the legacy auto companies. A lot of the legacy auto company stock is held by elderly people that depend on these dividend checks for their retirement, and they're dividend type people that, hey, just give me my check. And Tesla retains the capital, does R&D, continues to reinvest in the future of the company. They don't feel a need to manage quarterly earnings. I've listened to Elon Musk talk on several conference calls, and the types of questions that traditional auto analysts asks, Elon, like what your sales are going to be next quarter and stuff like that. Elon doesn't really care about that because he's so focused on the long-term vision of the company that they don't feel a need to manage their quarterly earnings in order to disappoint the Wall Street analysts. And the high employee ownership aligns work incentives with the investors. Direct sales model eliminates dealership markup, fixed price, no haggling. Okay, you don't have to be in a sense, a battle with the salesman at a car dealership. Market clearing price reduces shortages and surpluses. Traditional sales model with their retail distribution, you tend to get inventory buildup at the dealerships and shortages, and the informational communication in terms of like what the market demand is has to be mediated through all these dealers and doesn't go immediately to the manufacturing floor. Whereas in Tesla, that information about how many cars are needed by the market is instantly communicated to the factory floor. Dealers have inherent conflict of interest for traditional car companies because if they push EVs, they know then people aren't going to be coming in for oil changes. People aren't going to be coming in for fluid flushes on their radiator systems. It's going to reduce the money that they make off of their like maintenance type of a business, which is where they make a lot of their profit from. Purchases can occur 24/7, 365 days a year online. I live in the state of Michigan. I think there's laws that prevent car dealerships from being open on either Saturdays or Sundays around Metro Detroit area or something because you can't shop for a car on weekends around here. Pretty soon, and they're already testing this out, the Tesla vehicles, when you order them online, they will drive to your driveway. They will drive themselves to your home and park themselves in your driveway. So how convenient is that? So final category of economic moats is kind of like a grab bag of things that are related to the companies surrounding and related to Tesla. Okay, Elon Musk owns the Boring Company. They can bring in the Boring Company They can bore a tunnel underneath an expressway if they feel that they want to connect up, have the vehicles drive themselves to a parking lot on the other side of an expressway. They just, you know, boom, and they don't have to worry about having the vehicles, crossing an expressway. They just go underground. XAI has a Grok AI assistant that's being integrated into Tesla cars, so you can talk to the car and ask it questions, and it's like, hey, can you tell me what restaurants are in the area on my way home that I can stop at in order to get Chinese food? And the Grok will talk back to the people. Starlink, SpaceX Starlink service is looks like it's going to be integrated with Tesla. They just filed patents on how to integrate the Starlink antenna into the roof of Teslas, and so that'll be coming probably in next year or two. Optimus Robot product line can be repurposed as assembly line workers for their manufacturing. They can be used for robotaxi cleaning operations in order to take care of some of that mundane type of work. New Model S with rockets and jets. There's been rumors coming around that their new sports model car will be able to fly a little bit under certain situations, and people believe that SpaceX rocket type engineers are working with Tesla in order to create the next generation of supercar. Elon Musk owns Twitter, now known as X, and that is a giant marketing megaphone for Tesla. And you can be sure that their algorithms tend to help propel positive information about Tesla out into the millions and millions and millions of people that use Twitter. And SpaceX has plans to build things on the moon, to colonize Mars, and having a humanoid robot and electric vehicles would be the ideal way of moving things around on the moon and Mars, where you basically can't use internal combustion engine vehicles. And you can be sure that the Tesla people would be working and developing products for SpaceX. So these are some of these are the major economic barriers to entry that other businesses just are not able to match. And when you overlap and combine all these different barriers to entry, it means that as Tesla scales its revenue out with its full self-driving, especially capability, and we get higher and higher revenue, these barriers are going to prevent competitors from taking away that profit. So their economic profit margins are just going to be able to massively grow. And so if you get more quantity and you get a higher margin, the quantity times the margin is the total profit. And so this is going to be a tremendous time over the next 4 or 5 years. Once again, I'm not a financial advisor, okay? You need to do your own research. This is the top of funnel, so I'm trying to make you aware and to teach the awareness of what the opportunity is. And so talk it over with your own financial advisor and see if TSLA is the right kind of investment for you. So I'm Jeff Whitaker. This has been Top of Funnel. Thanks and take care and Happy New Year.